All right. So as people are jumping on, name and organization in the chat. And here is what our agenda looks like for today. We will start out after we get a few more people in and name organization in the chat for introductions. Then I will be turning it over to our policy priority team to talk about policy and advocacy this morning. Then we'll have a break at 9:45, and then we'll have Iowa Food System Coalition updates, as well as our brief statewide updates that do include our policy priority, or not our policy, our other priority teams. And then we'll end with announcements, events, an opportunity for everybody to share if you have anything coming up that you want to share with the group later. And we'll wrap up by 11:30 today. All right. I'm going to turn it over to the policy priority team.
All right. Thank you, Jody. And Ilsa, should I go ahead and share screen? I'm equipped to do that. Oh, you got it going. Cool.
Sorry, one second. Cool.
How's everybody doing today? Seeing some smiling faces. It's good to see everybody.
I feel like the weather has got me so tired in the morning. So morning meetings are rough for me right now.
It's becoming hibernation season in Iowa with the shorter days. Comes with its perks and its hard times. All right. Okay. Well, Ilsa, are you able to share?
Oh, is it not sharing?
I
Nope.
don't. So if you need me to try, let me know.
No, it just
Yeah, we're up now.
great. My least favorite thing is when Zoom minimizes the windows, the video windows, and then yeah. Anyway, here we go. Great. So I'm Ilse DeWald, and I'm on the steering committee for Iowa Food System Coalition. I work for Johnson County as the local food and farm manager, and I also sit on the local food policy network team with Tommy and Luke.
I'm Tommy, and I work for Iowa Farmers Union as the policy specialist. I also run a little food hub in Grinnell called Grinnell Farm to Table. And I just finished up a campaign for the Iowa State House, running on a lot of food systems issues. We weren't successful this time, but we'll keep working on it. And I am very happy to be part of the Iowa Food System Coalition Policy Network team.
So just as a reminder to everyone about our policy network priority team, these are our goals and strategies that we created as part of the Setting the Table for All Iowans plan. So the goals of our team are to engage with local and state partners to discuss and organize and advocate for transformational policy change. And we're really doing that by looking at what is already existing, what's already happening at the state level, just identifying and documenting policies that have happened and as they happen related to food system issues. We are also working to create partnerships among organizations that are already working on food system issues or issues related to food systems. How can we work together to support legislation for food policy change? Same thing with those strengthening advocacy networks. So not only who's already partnered and working on advocacy, but how do we increase the number of people working on advocacy and increase grassroots support? And then also taking a look at local food policy councils across the state to see how can we partner, increase the number of local councils and community-based food coalitions and help the lessons that are being learned in those local coalitions be translated to state impacts.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quick and say if you guys have any questions as we're going through this, please just drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them as we go. Um, yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of being part of the Iowa Food System Coalition, after working at the State House with the Farmers Union for a couple of years, I've really come to see the everyday presence of lots of special interests and lobby groups at the Iowa State House. You know, they have a paid presence, and so they're there every day meeting with our legislators. And so it's really important. And it's been amazing to see kind of the grassroots effort of all the different organizations and food system partners around the state to start showing up at the Capitol, talking to our legislators, and how much of a difference it makes to the legislators. I think they listen so much more when it's real people and not lobbyists that come to their door. And so we want to continue to grow that power. A little bit about kind of the coalition we're building here that we're all a part of with RIFASWIG and the Iowa Food System Coalition is that we kind of we get our strength in the diversity of interests that are part of this coalition. And particularly, I see two kind of different groups that emerge and a lot of groups in between. But in our group, we have some folks who are really focused on health and nutrition, things like food access and making sure that everybody, you know, can access nutritious food. And then we have at the same time, we have people who are very interested in the small farm side of things and building opportunities for local and regional growers to grow their markets and be part of our rural economy. So putting those two things together, you kind of have your local foods folks and you have your hunger and nutrition advocacy. That makes a really strong team that we're working to continue building on. And so with that, we kind of carry these values of bringing in grounded storytelling from real experiences of farmers and people who are eating food across the state of Iowa to make the policies that we are asking for. Because there's so many things that go into our food system policy right now. You know, if we think about the Farm Bill, uh, and a lot of those things are controlled from the top down. And so we want to make sure that when we are creating policy that we are asking real people from the bottom up, what would your ideal food system look like? And start to use our policy levers to create that ideal. So you can see in this slide, we have a picture from one of our community roundtables event in Waterloo. This was hosted by the Jubilee United Methodist Church, and Luke Elzinga did a series of these as part of his work with the DMARC Food Pantry Network, talking about food insecurity around the state and kind of ways we can address that and build a better food system. And so as part of that series, we had that event in Waterloo. We also did one in Grinnell and we did one in Spencer. And these were really, you know, just great ways to practice talking about, you know, that grassroots idea of how do we make our food system better for everybody involved. And so just wanted to bring this up. You know, if you're interested in doing something like this in your community, please know that this is an option. And it was a really cool thing to see this happen. A lot of people came out. We had good food and great conversation. Elsa, this is my slide.
Yeah, but I can take it if you want me to.
Yeah. So another thing that we have done in the past, you know, as we're trying to build kind of our state policy agenda, is we host a local food policy summit And last year we had our first local food policy summit, and that was at part of the Iowa Farmers Union Convention. And we invite folks from around the state, people from state agencies like IDOLS, Health and Human Services, Department of Education. We had a legislative panel with 3 legislators. We invite nonprofits, small businesses, colleges and universities, and everybody from the Iowa Food System Coalition to come together and to discuss kind of what the policies can look like to help boost local food markets and promote, better food access in Iowa. And you can see Chris just put the link for this year's Local Food Policy Summit in the chat. That's coming up next month on December 6th in Ames. So we encourage everybody to attend that event as well.
Another thing we did in the actually at the beginning of the year, this January, we hosted advocacy trainings online. And so thank you to everyone who was able to attend those trainings. There was a series of 4 virtual trainings during the month leading up to our Day on the Hill, really to build confidence and skills and encourage people to come out and share their stories with our legislators and join us for that day of education and advocacy. And we are planning to host a similar series this coming January 2025. And we will be sending out information about that. But it was great to see a lot of both new faces to advocacy, the many people who had never advocated directly before or spoken with a legislator to educate them on a specific topic before. But we also had some people who had done it before, and getting to share that experience was really powerful and recognizing too that even if you have advocated before, it never hurts to practice and also to get comfortable with the policy priorities and the issues that we're focusing on for Iowa Food System Coalition work. Another thing we're looking forward to is that we do have some grant funding to support accessibility of making sure people have gas money and have what they need to be able to transport themselves to our Day on the Hill and participate. And there'll be more information about that coming out soon. So like I said, this all led up to our first Day on the Hill this past January, and it was really a great success. Really amazing to see the number of people who came out and supported and were able to advocate. And I think that we had a great method of supporting. We can always tweak it and do everything a little bit better next year, but having groups of people go up to advocate, so you're not going alone. You're going with a group of people and having some like cheerleaders or coaches to help encourage and just direct and help the conversation keep going. So you can easily learn how to do this type of advocacy, do this type of direct advocacy. And it was great to see the number of orgs too that we had tabling there. So we had some tabling spots to be able to share your own organization's information with our legislators, as well as the collective Iowa Food System Coalition priorities and policy goals. So we had a number of farmers who were able to attend and directly share their stories. And I think some of those stories are some of the most impactful, as are any stories that are coming directly, from you, and especially to your legislators. When you're the constituent, the impact is very significant. And it was a really fun time. We had a great lunch, and I think it's going to be I'm looking forward to our Day on the Hill coming up this next year. So a lot of that advocacy work did lead us to a legislative win. This has been a great example of partnership, of having many organizations come in with ideas about how we can continue to support food access, as well as increasing and expanding our local and regional food system. And that came together in the Choose Iowa Food Purchasing Pilot Project, which so far earmarked $300,000 to provide food banks and schools and emergency feeding organizations locally grown food. So far, the state has rolled out their food bank program, and I believe they're set to roll out their schools program. You can see that although $300,000 is a great, a great step forward for a pilot program. We were using a lot of advocacy around our LFPA numbers that were in the millions of dollars that we were able to invest in local food systems. So I think that there's a lot of demand that this pilot program can grow into. And then a requirement of the program as part of the partnership with Choose Iowa is that those local farms must be a Choose Iowa vendor. Anything else you have to say on that, Tommy?
No, only that we're really excited. This is the first investment directly from the state of Iowa, funding for local food procurement in the history of the state. So this is a huge step for the state of Iowa, and we're really excited and hopefully it will continue to grow. And I see Aaron just put that in the chat too. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, and just an example too of partners, I think, ideas coming together, and that doesn't always look exactly like how you make the ask of the legislature, and sometimes it comes together in a unique way. And we're, just excited about it.
Hey, Tommy and Ilsa, Zach from Global Greens here. Is there information on how to become one of those vendors? Like how far in the process is all of that?
Yeah, so Choose Iowa, you can definitely become a Choose Iowa vendor. They have a website that I'm sure we can link. And it's basically a marketing fee that you pay, and I believe it's $100, I believe annually, to be listed as a Choose Iowa vendor. And with that, you are able to use Choose Iowa labeling and marketing, as well as has access to programs like this.
Yeah, and I see Beth Romer, who's the director of Choose Iowa, is in the call with us today, and I think she'll be sharing some updates maybe a little bit later. But yeah, it's great. When you sign up for Choose Iowa, they send you like a box of really cool merch and stuff. And I think Choose Iowa is really on the up and up in the state, so it's a good time to get involved if you're a producer, or food hubs also can sign up to be involved. And I see that Beth just put the link for the website in the chat. Thank you, Beth. Okay, so we wanted to go through some of what we've been up to for the last year, just to kind of get people's brains going on kind of how did we approach building our advocacy for year one, and kind of what were our successes, what were we up to. But we want to spend the bulk of today's presentation talking about our preparation for the 2025 legislative session, and kind of, where we're at in that process and how folks can contribute, including during today's call if you have comments. But we really just hope to get everybody up to date with where we're at. So for 2025, we started back in the middle of the summer with our launch of the Iowa Food System Plan, setting the table for all Iowans. We had this picture is from July 1st at the Capitol. We had several media outlets there and had a press conference and then a delicious local lunch. The plan was also launched in several other venues, including on Iowa Public Radio. You can check out some of the interviews about the Iowa Food System Plan there. Ilsa, am I missing anywhere else that it was launched?
Yeah, I just think we're all trying to get the word out, as I'm sure many people on the call are also trying to get the word out of the plan, and how that has just bolstered our policy asks to have the plan out there.
Yeah, if people want to drop links, relevant links from different press from the plan release in the chat, that would be great. And then share them on your Facebook. Tell your friends. The Iowa Food System Plan is live. The second thing we've been working on is drafting legislative priorities by meeting with all of the priority teams, and other groups outside of the priority teams we thought it would be good to partner with. to kind of create those bottom-up legislative priorities. And then the last thing is we're planning our whole slew of events again this year, our policy summit, our advocacy training, and our day on the Hill, so that we can tap in and really make this happen this year. So we're going to go a little bit more depth into all three of these things. Also, if you want to click to the next slide. So the first thing we did, and if you're a part of a policy team, I mean a priority team, this might look a little bit familiar to you, is we met with every other priority team to do some policy brainstorming with all of them. And when I say every other priority team, uh, I don't mean all of them. I mean the ones that we were able to make meeting arrangements with, and we haven't met with every team yet. So if you're still interested in meeting with us and we have not met with your priority team yet, let's get something on the calendar soon, because that would be great. But we met with most of them. And the steps of this looked like, number one, we identified the key overlaps between the different priority teams and policy. So for instance, like the procurement priority team, they have in their strategy for achieving their part of the food system plan, they have things like having a state program for schools and food pantry procurement. And so that's clearly an area where their strategy overlaps with policy. And we want to bring those things out through our policy team. Most of the teams do have some sort of policy implication in their strategies. And so we really want to be the agent to help carry those things out and work together. The second part was having those meetings. We often just took 30 minutes out of a normal priority team meeting to kind of have a brainstorming session with everybody that was part of the priority team and hear what are the ideas that come up, kind of throwing anything against the wall. It doesn't matter if it sticks or not. We're going to take your ideas and make sure they go into kind of the brain vault of this is where we want to take our food system. And then after we got all of those ideas on paper, we have like a really nice long notes document with everybody's ideas. We went through them as the policy priority team and prioritized them using a rubric. And we were looking for the rubric, we were looking at feasibility. So political feasibility, social feasibility, and economic feasibility. Impact. So how great of an impact is this going to have? Is it going to reach all different kinds of populations or just a small proportion of the population? Alignment. So how many different priority teams does this overlap with? And then equity. Is this promoting equitable access to resources and making sure everybody is impacted positively by the policy change? And some of the key questions we were using to guide our policy proposals: do these proposals provide those most affected by the food system with more input? Do they support food raising farms? Do they keep dollars circulating locally and boost our community vitality? And do they diversify Iowa's agriculture and diets? And so we looked through all those things with every single idea that came up. And next slide has a lot of those ideas that came up, I think. So yeah, this is a broad outline of kind of where the different brainstorming took us. And I'll just kind of let people take a look at this for a minute and then I will run through it. Sorry, I know there's a lot of text here. This reminds me of being in elementary school and having sustained silent reading. So thank you for everybody for participating in that. I will go through some of these. You can see they're really all over the map, which is a great thing. We want to have different policy directions to take us, not just through the 2025 session, but starting to think ahead over the next 5 years. Where do we want policy to take us? But a lot of the ideas this year were focused around that Choose Iowa program. The first set were focused around hoping to make the Choose Iowa purchasing pilot a permanent program and expanding it so that more schools and more food access organizations can access some of that funding. Some specific changes in addition to just expanding and making it permanent. We want to make sure we're expanding the definition of what an emergency food organization is to include food pantries, early care centers, senior homes, and also the Meskwaki settlement. We want to hopefully increase the school purchasing cap to the full $10,000 so that schools can apply for Choose Iowa grants up to that $10,000 so they can be purchasing a lot of food through this program. And then we want to try and focus on prioritizing certain producers in this so that similar to the LFPA program, there's kind of a tiered producer ranking where we can prioritize historically underserved producers in our procurement through the Choose Iowa purchasing pilot. The second ideas that came up with Choose Iowa were related to the value added grants program. This program has been exceptional for farmers and food businesses across the state. We basically just want to see the grant program expand with some more funding and increasing the individual grant ceiling, reducing some of the matching requirements, and allowing for more investment in food hubs, aggregation, and transportation of local food. The other thing related to Choose Iowa that came up a lot in these policy sessions was giving the local food and farm advisory council, which was created by the state of Iowa, a role in overseeing some of Choose Iowa's programs. There's a history of the local food and farm advisory council. It's a great group of folks that is part of IDOLS. They're regular citizens that are volunteering their time for this. And we think that it could be a great fit for this to be an oversight body for Choose Iowa. So that is what was talked about with Choose Iowa in our broader priority sessions. Another big area that came up was food processing. We started having a lot of conversations last year around food processing, and several food hubs started doing food processing on a kind of smaller pilot scale, shredding cabbage or cubing sweet potatoes, that sort of stuff. And so there's really interest in this at the state legislative level to support more food processing so that food is easier to be used in school kitchens and things like that. And also that we can process some of the food so that it can be stored better over the winter and that sort of stuff. So food processing people were hoping to have more support for things like incubator kitchens, shared use kitchens, and food processing spaces, and using the Rural Innovation Grant Program, which was launched this year by the Iowa Economic Development Authority, to include equipment for shared use kitchens and grocery stores to do some light food processing as well. So those are really exciting developments for our food processing. Another topic that came up was insurance. We have often heard, it's really hard for small scale crop farmers to get insurance when it comes to growing vegetables. And then the other part is it's very hard to get insurance for agritourism. And this can be a real, farms can do agritourism. It can be very helpful for their bottom line. And so looking into ways to try and increase the insurance for small farms. Another big question is labor. Labor can often be very cost prohibitive for beginning farmers. And, when you start hiring people, it can be so expensive that it prevents scaling up. And unfortunately, we've seen a number of farms go out of business over the past decade because they started hiring labor and were not able to keep up with their bottom line. So looking at programs where we can try and incentivize growing a labor force, including returning citizen job programs for formerly incarcerated individuals, thinking about mentorship programs available for high schools or FFA, maybe even some community college mentorship programs. And then, another part of our labor equity team is thinking about who are the farm workers and how can we improve the safety of these jobs. And so we have big concerns about some of the pesticide liability bills that are being pushed by big chemical companies that would remove civil protections from farm workers to be able to protect themselves in court if they are harmed by chemicals on the job. So those are some of the topics that came up when it comes to labor. If we move into nutrition, we met with the Iowa, I'm gonna forget, healthy it's the HEAL partnership. Is that correct, Elsa?
Yeah, yeah. That
Healthy,
the
healthy.
nutrition collection group that we've partnered with that is partnered with our food, nutrition, and health priority team. Mhm.
And I think we have some folks from HHS here with us today, so thanks for meeting with us. Some of the ideas that came up at those meetings were home delivered meals, specifically for aging populations in the state of Iowa. How can we get more fresh meals and healthy meals to those folks? Because oftentimes those aging populations remember when they had all of the great bounty from the garden coming in, and they really appreciate that fresh food and produce that's grown on our local farms. So trying to figure out what can we do to increase access to that for our aging populations. And then continuing our advocacy for double up food bucks and EBT. This is a program that's been managed by the Iowa Healthiest State Initiative for several years, and we would like to see it expand. It's been a huge success for local farmers, including at Global Greens Farmers Market in Des Moines. The last two categories we've hit on, and these are a little bit more peripheral. These are not as directly related to food systems and beginning farmers and fruit and vegetable growers, but we've heard from several groups related to us that we want to think about the environmental impacts. And there's most folks on the call may be familiar with Iowa's Water and Land Legacy, also known as IWIL, which is the state's fund for purchasing natural lands and making them public. So we want to support an investment in IWIL so that we can start to have more natural lands and more people taking care of those natural lands. And then the last part is continuing to monitor this pesticide liability bill that I mentioned earlier, because we've seen that the pesticide companies are taking out a lot of ad space in newspapers and on TV, trying to make this bill look like a good thing. But it really takes away rights of farmers and farm workers to protect themselves in court against potentially very dangerous implications on their health. So we want to make sure that we are supportive as a coalition of efforts to protect that right of farmers and farm workers. Okay, I made it through without, perishing. So that's good.
Yes. So that was all of the just to give Tommy a break from talking for just a second, I'll do a little transition. That was all of the info that we heard from meeting with all of the priority teams. And you'll recall we had created a rubric for how we were going to get from that very large list of priorities into our top or primary goals for the year. Knowing that, there's so much work going on across the coalition, there's so much policy work that we could be doing. And that we have, we are still a growing organization. We are still figuring out how to expand our capacity, and also knowing that having a couple key targeted messages helps those really ring true and ring clear with people so they remember, because repetition is a huge part of the advocacy and education game. And so knowing that, we met as a priority team and discussed all the information that we had taken in and basically rank ordered those opportunities based on our rubric.
Yep. Yeah, so you can see on the screen now if you want to read through them. This is kind of the boiled down version of the last slide. and it's what we are hoping to focus on this year in the legislative session, with all of our partner groups, everyone in this call. These are the priorities we want to go in with a unified front, and we think, running them through the rubric, we think these are feasible. We think they have a high impact. We think that they align with a lot of the priority areas, and that they can really give us some more wins here in year two, to follow up on our success in year one.
Real quick, Tommy, I know we didn't have the best chance to meet. I think we had a meeting scheduled. So this is Zach we're the priority lead for the land access. I think I'm going to call it out. Like, I don't know if agrivoltaics is actually a feasible option for land access, especially for the people who need land. I think we're like looking at that currently with Iowa State, at their solar farm up there. I guess, I think going after something a little simpler, because that's a good overlapping priority of, let's call it, energy and environment potentially, and land access. But I just want to make sure that we don't forget that the number one issue of beginning and historically the disadvantaged folks is land access. There are policies in place, for instance, in Minnesota, that make down payment assistance more feasible, and there's a lot more of those farmers accessing and owning land up there. And so when we have more, I don't want to say the right farmers, but when we have more, let's say, socially and ecologically minded farmers owning and accessing land, we'll have more food, and we'll like naturally have more of the entrepreneurship that we want, to help grow food and be creative in those spaces. So and I continuing to feel like that message is being underserved, even though that's like, and that's what we talked about, urban ag leadership team too, is land access is the number one issue that has been identified around the state, even by NRCS folks that they're hearing. And so I just want to make sure that that message is loud and clear. I would say, anyway, that I'll leave it at that, but we should make sure to have that discussion, because I want to make sure that those goals are included in there, because a lot of these priorities are really important, but they're mostly going to benefit people who already have land and already have operations. And we want to be thinking about some upstream investments too, related to gardening near people's neighborhoods for people's food security, who don't have the ability to, I guess that's like one of our number one goals is, land access near people's homes so they can have more say, more health, more nutrition, all that stuff. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you. I appreciate all of this. This is you guys are amazing. I don't know how you did it all either, but I just interjected myself.
No, thanks so much for sharing, Zach. And I think we'd love to see those examples. Like if you have any from Minnesota, I think that we'd love to learn what other states are doing and programs that are working well. That is always helpful to be able to look at someone else's model and then figure out what's going to work here based on what we have. And so that would be very helpful. And I think that with our secondary goals, these are policies that we are anticipating seeing or have heard about in the legislature that we are keeping an eye on, but are not necessarily going to appear on our list of priorities on our one-pager for advocacy this year.
Yep, that's well put, Ilsa. And Zach, thank you for those comments. And I think, land access is one of those things where we want to keep developing our policy because we know that land access is at the top of the list when it comes to growing our food system in Iowa. So let's keep an eye on that. But yeah, these are all things that we've kind of heard of that the state legislature will likely be working on. And so we're trying to form some opinions on them. But yeah, these primary goals at the top here are really what we expect to appear on our one pager. And I can go through them in a minute. Aaron, I also see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and I just want to express how much I appreciate the work that the team has done here and reaching out to our priority teams and going through a really thoughtful process. Um, and I'm really happy to see that the food purchasing program is a really high priority. Year two of these programs is often the year that's challenging, the most challenging when you're trying to get renewed funding, because you just don't have all the data yet from year one, and you know it. Um, some people might be under the impression that this was just meant to be a 1 year program, was meant to stop. So putting a huge priority on getting year two funding for programs like this is really, really important. And I think you guys described all the reasons for this very, very well. So good job, guys, and um, uh, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're at a really critical inflection point with the Choose Iowa program in general. And I've been, I think what like something that I think I actually have dreams at night about Choose Iowa, like good dreams, because I'm so excited to see the work that the Choose Iowa department has put in, and everything that they're getting done and the way that they're prioritizing the growth of our local and regional food system here. And I think that this is a really bipartisan supported initiative by the state of Iowa. Um, so that's why our top two goals are both about growing that state marketing grants and purchasing program, because that can be an engine for really positive change for growers all around the state. And it's amazing that the Iowa Department of Agriculture has made that a priority. So definitely keep spreading the good word about Choose Iowa. Um, the other two priorities on here, I'll mention just a little bit, are the Rural Innovation Grant Program. We uh, we last year in the legislative session, we proposed that there be a allocation for rural grocery stores to have a grant program. And that was a bipartisan bill. It didn't make it through the allocations, but then this summer, we saw Economic Development Authority put out a grant program that was exactly the same wording as the bill that had been written for rural grocery. So we were really excited to see that although it didn't pass last legislative session, they did end up putting it into play this year, and grocery stores applied for it, and there was way more demand for the grant program than they were able to meet. And so we want to see that program expand again so that we can keep our rural groceries going, and also do these things like shared use kitchens and fruit and vegetable processing. And then again, we're looking for that state investment in the Double Up Food Bucks program, just matching some of the federal government investment so that more people can access Double Up Food Bucks. And we think that this is a reasonable priority, because the Department of Health and Human Services has emphasized how important they think nutrition is when it comes to food access. And so thinking about being able to access more fresh and locally grown fruits and vegetables and supporting local farmers seems like a win-win. And so we really hope that we can get some work done on that priority as well. So those are our major priorities. I think we're running out of time, but we have some dates to share here, and we want to make sure that everybody in this call is making plans to attend these things if they can, and bringing your friends or your children or your grandparents or anybody that you want to come out for these events. The more people that are involved, the better. So the Local Food Policy Summit is in Ames on December 6, 2024. We plan to have representatives from IDOLS and Iowa Economic Development there. We'll have several legislators there, and lots of folks from the Food System Coalition. We are again hosting our advocacy training during January. These will be virtual trainings where you can learn more about how to show up at the Capitol. And that will all culminate in our Food and Farm Day on the Hill on January 23rd at the Capitol in Des Moines. So, and we, in addition to that one day on the Hill, we anticipate being on the Hill a lot more in general this year. So, beyond just that one day. Elsa, anything we're missing?
There's yeah, no, just please attend if you can. And even if you're not sure if you are going to go to the Day on the Hill, you're more than welcome to attend the advocacy trainings virtually. Like, definitely please participate in those. I think that they're for, they could be relevant to other parts of your life or work too. And just a way to hear and more about the policy priorities that we're working on. Oh, and then I just wanted to say big shout out to Center for Rural Affairs for the rural grocery bill. Like they really led the effort. They're one of our partners on the local food policy network team, and their efforts were really amazing there to get that moving where it did. And we were excited to see it show up, like Tommy was saying, even though it wasn't, no one sometimes you're like, oh, there's that wording that we all were talking about for a long time. And here it showed up in this random place. But yeah, definitely excited to have the partners on board that we do and continue to build partnerships. Great. And then there's a question in the chat from Jan about how we would suggest that we plant seeds on these issues with our newly elected or re-elected officials ahead of time. Before the summit or the Day on the Hill.
Yeah, no, I want to answer that question. We were at the Southwest Iowa Food Summit last week in Malvern, and kind of a similar question came up. And Cynthia from the Center for Rural Affairs made a really great point, I think, which is that oftentimes um, receiving just 5 emails on a subject is enough for a legislator to start saying this is a priority. And so every single touch point that we can get with our newly elected officials or, people who have been in office for a long time is very important. So starting to plant those seeds, sending emails, putting up Facebook posts, showing up at town halls and asking questions, just starting to talk about the things. I'm a big believer that the more that things are spoken, the more real they become. And so making sure that this is on the radar of all of our elected officials so that they can get behind the Iowa food system plan.
Yeah, and like you're saying, Tommy, like the plan itself of like just you don't have to be an expert yet in our specific policy priorities that we're going to be bringing forward, but the value of just like name recognition for the coalition and as well for the major overarching vision and goals of the plan, I think will help to open the door for these conversations about the more specific policy asks.
And I'll add just a little bit to that. We are working on some press pitches that relate to our priorities that we hope to have published in December, January, leading up to the session. We're going to offer a couple online sessions for folks that have been newly elected or re-elected to have a presentation on the plan itself, and then a breakdown of what the legislative priorities are that we're pitching. But it's also a good time to be tracking if you see that if someone's having a town hall or a listening post, you can have a lot of impact showing up at those things. And I am always going to be a big fan of letters to the editor because folks pay attention to those as well. And so if you need help writing letters to the editor, just reach out. We'll train you on that. We're going to also be doing all these advocacy trainings, and one of the things we're going to train people on is bird dogging, and that's like the act of asking effective political questions. And it's a lot of fun.
Yes, well, thank you very much, everyone, for such great information. There's a lot of exciting things going on right now. But in order for everyone to get a little break before our next session, I encourage you to take that now. And there is a poll that should have just popped up into your window that you can answer when you get back from your break. And we should be back with the agenda at 10 o'clock. So about 9 minutes, and we'll see you back here.